The MPTF Media Center presents the international premiere podcast of Mystery Theater Audibles, Blackfire, a science fiction fantasy novel written and narrated by Anthony Lawrence, directed and produced by Madeline Smith Lawrence, produced by Jennifer Clymer, sound engineered by Marcus Murrieta.
Chapter 62. Did I pass out as well? I wasn't sure. I know I'd blacked out for what seemed only a moment. I knew I had that same swift wave of vertigo and nausea that I'd had earlier moving through space and time. I knew also that I wasn't in that room with Poe anymore. It was only seconds before I realized just exactly where I was. It was the room with table 18. There was that huge, ancient, ornately carved table with a smooth green soft leather surface ruling the center of the circular room with a domed ceiling. The room was well lit, but I couldn't see a sign of anyone, including Oren. Then I heard something rustling on the far side of the great table. I peered over the vast surface and slowly made out the top of Oren's head on the other side of the table. And then I saw his hand come up, holding a half-empty bottle of port, which he deposited on the rim of the table. "Oren," I called out weakly, still trying to overcome the vertigo. His complete head appeared, and he placed his finger to his mouth for me to stay quiet, and then motioned for me to join him. I moved toward the other side of the table, still slightly unstable, and not quite sure what I was doing here. "He said the answers must be on the table," Oren whispered. Oren was examining the heavy wood carvings along the side of the table with a magnifying glass that appeared to be the same one that Poe had been using earlier. I bent down beside Oren to silently observe just what he was looking at. His fingers were working their way along the surface of the wood, tracing the elaborate and sometimes grotesque figures, the rugged features of age, the beetling brows, the furrows and lines neutralizing the defects of the grain of the wood. "Human nature," he whispered to me, "has always been to ornament every article in use." Are you looking for more clues or what?" I whispered foggily. "The egg symbol, the ellipse with the H3 is the sealed mystery and was definitely referring to Hermes Trismegistus." "How do you know that?" I asked, totally baffled at both the name and his conclusion. "Where do you think the term hermetically sealed comes from? Hermes was a great mythological alchemist and magician who supposedly created spells to protect objects so that nothing could access their contents. Existentialism became fashionable in the Shit. Oren shook his head in his usual frustration with unwanted incoming data, and then reached up to grab the bottle of port. He took a long swig, replaced it on the table's edge, and went back to examining the surface of the carvings. I glanced around worriedly, thinking that Daniel might be coming into the room at any time. "What about Daniel? What if he comes back in here?" "He won't. Not for 4 hours. He'll be in his sleep mode and nothing can wake him. He didn't bother to prevent me from knowing about that because he didn't think I could do anything about it without knowing the secret of the hiding place." The tips of his fingers danced along the curving surfaces of the wood as he inspected every nook with the magnifying glass. Suddenly Oren froze, his gaze fastening on a particular area of the dark wood near a corner. There it is. Chapter 63. Father Montus was seated at the baby grand piano in his suite. His deft, slender fingers stroked the keys with accomplishment as he played the beautiful adagio from Rachmaninoff's Symphony No. 2, Opus 27 in E minor. He had an innate talent and had practiced quite a bit under his musician mother's tutelage, but he had also more years than most to adapt his skills, having regained his youth at table 18. He had accompanied Jordan and Cody from the downstairs ice cream parlor to her suite, where the boy was to now take a shower after having been granted his first wish, which was to have a banana split. The priest had once again assumed his studied, humble role in having given Cody new life, and had gone on to assure Jordan that he would make every effort possible to find a way to help them leave the resort safely. He had then returned to his own suite on the 8th floor and had sat down at the piano, which he often played, while in a deeper and malignant part of his mind, he was also contemplating other, even darker, concertos. He finished the last strains of the Adagio with a flourish, and then sat quietly for a long moment on the bench. He then rose slowly to his feet, reached into one of his side pockets, and brought out a pair of dark leather gloves and a small wire cutter. He slipped on the gloves and then lifted the piano cover, which exposed the heart of the instrument. He set the upright bar that kept the cover open and then reached inside with the cutter and snipped one of the long piano wires at both ends. It made a jarring, discordant sound as he separated the wire from the piano. He lifted the fine, glistening wire up toward his face, examined it for a moment, and then twisted each end around his gloved hands in a circular, twining motion, and then held it taut, dark eyes ominous, as he stared at his new instrument of death. Chapter 64. Oren shifted the magnifying glass so that I might see what he was staring intently at on the side of the huge carved table 18. He appeared elated at the discovery, moved the glass so I could see what he was referring to, but all I saw on the surface appeared to be a small, flat green rectangle with an archaic design that looked like IN5 engraved on its surface. "That's it," said Oren excitedly, trying to suppress his voice to a whisper. "What's it?" I responded with growing frustration and cynicism. It's like an Easter egg hunt," he grinned in a kind of drunken, slightly mad and cryptic way, his eyes gleaming triumphantly. I, of course, responded in my usual forthright quest for intellectual revelations. "Give me a fucking break, Oren." "It's an intentional, hidden message, Rafe. And it can be either an ancient metaphysical or contemporary computer-programmed message. The sealed mystery egg on the back of one of those cards, and now this, a replica of Hermes' emerald tablet. That was a text all about primordial substances and transmutation." Okay, I whined in total dismay, waving my hands in a futile gesture. "But what does this have to do with that opal, and why should I care? Look, Oren, I can't wrap my head around any of this." "Look, my dear friend Rafe, I simply don't have the time to explain everything to you. Something is happening to me, and it's growing rapidly. There is no hope of changing that. But there is hope for you, Jordan, and Cody. I can't just rest on hope for them, Oren. I got here on free will, and I've got to get back to them. What about the rest of humankind, Rafe? Its fate may rest on what we do here now. I know where the opal is, but just knowing that fact does not allow me to do anything about it. That can only be left to you." "Me?" I exclaimed with growing alarm. I don't understand any of this. What can I do? What's happening to you?" Oren slowly held up his hand, and I stared at it in stunned disbelief. The skin of his hand appeared to be changed.